Now on BBC World News, the biggest African and international news stories. Focus on Africa.
This is Focus on Africa. I'm Lukwesa Burak. Our top stories today. At least 35 dead after 2 car bomb attacks in central Somalia. The Islamist group Al-Shabaab claim responsibility. One person takes their life every 40 seconds somewhere in the world. We'll be meeting the group that are hoping to save lives. Also in the programme, doing a job she loves, a job that matters to all of us. One of the few Nigerian women working as a forest conservationist tell us why the fight to save this precious habitat is so vital. And in the sport today, Cape Verde pays tribute to Pelé. Its national stadium is renamed after the late football legend. Hello and welcome to Focus on Africa from BBC World News. At least 35 people have been killed in a huge double car bomb attack in the town of Mahas in central Somalia. The blast was so powerful, witnesses have described people hundreds of kilometres from the explosions being wounded by flying fragments. Several houses were also flattened. The Islamist group Al-Shabaab said it carried out the attacks. So, some 300 kilometres from the capital, Mogadishu, Mahas is in the Hiran region, where a major offensive was launched several months ago against Al-Shabaab. President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed vowed to wage war against the Islamist militants when he took office in August of last year. However, since then, the insurgents have responded by escalating their attacks, and they continue to be a threat in much of the central and southern Somalia region. So let's discuss this further, because joining me now is Beverly Ocheng from BBC Monitoring in Nairobi. Beverly, I wonder what other details you've learnt about this attack.
Well, the 2 suicide bombs were actually targeting 2 officials from the Hiran region. One of them is the district commander of Mahas town. His name is Mohammed Mumin. And the other one was a federal MP. His name is Mohammed Jafar. And the 2 of them have been among those who are leading government initiatives or the government forces in this offensive against Al-Shabaab in the central region that started in August last year. And in fact, Jafar, the MP, he was an ex-military official, and he had led an offensive in October in the town of Mahas against Al-Shabaab, and he has been frequently at the front line. So it seems to be a reprisal violence attack, because Al-Shabaab has been on the back foot since the government operation started. Between August and October, they lost nearly 60 villages, and there have been massive militant casualties since that offensive began last year.
So are you saying that the offensive is yielding results then for the government?
Well, yes, there have been some significant results at the get-go. So there were 60 villages that were seized between those 2 months. And there has been an all-out propaganda or a narrative war, both by Al-Shabaab as well as by the government. We've seen the government shutting down various accounts being linked to the militant group to be able to put off the propaganda that they're putting out. Just as today, when they claimed that they had killed 87 people against an official casualty tally of 35 people who were killed. There has been some efforts to retake parts of the southern region. They have been augmented by clan militia who are mounting an uprising against the Al-Shabaab group, because their entrenchment is leading to increasing violence against civilians. So there is the government taking advantage of that to be able to win territory, as well as the propaganda war.
Beverly, I wonder if you could just remind us, there was an attack, wasn't there, a twin car bomb attack some 2 months ago. How does this compare?
Well, it is along the same scale. Of course, the 2 car bombs was in Mogadishu, which is the capital, where Al-Shabaab had been pushed back about a decade ago after that devastating truck bombing. In that Mogadishu attack that took place 2 months ago, 100 people were killed, 300 others were injured. There was another 20-hour siege at a hotel very close to the presidential palace, where 8 people were killed in that offensive. But the government is still trying to gain ground in areas that have been long-term Al-Shabaab strongholds since they were pushed pushed out of Mogadishu. Of course, Al-Shabaab remains a threat. Just over the past week, they have carried out 3 deadly attacks in Kenya, the neighboring country, and they have been trying to carry out incursions in Ethiopia as well to be able to gain more territory as they lose ground within Somalia. So they're not just a national security threat, they're also a regional threat.
I was just coming to that, so thank you for pointing me in the right direction, because the Somalian government isn't on their own in this fight, are they?
No, they are still receiving support from the African Union mission, which has had a transition into a transitional force. They're also receiving additional support from the US, which has gone back to Somalia after the Trump period where they pulled back forces. Now they're back in, they're carrying out airstrikes against Al-Shabaab militants. And there's that regional and international cooperation, which President Sheikh Mohamud is really counting on. He said in his New Year address that 2023 will be the year that Somalia defeats Al-Shabaab. It is yet to be seen, given the resilience of Al-Shabaab over 2 decades of violence, but there is international and regional goodwill to be able to enable the Somali army to become independent and resilient to be able to fight back Al-Shabaab.
Okay, Beverly Ochieng, thank you very much for that analysis. Thank you. Every 40 seconds, someone in the world decides, for whatever reason, tragic reason of course, that their only option is to take their own life. That's according to the World Federation of Mental Health, who also say that up to 95% of people facing mental health problems in low and middle income countries are unable to get any help at a time when they actually need it the most. Many people, young people in developing countries, are also unaware that there is help. There are ways to cope, and most importantly, that they are not alone. In Tanzania, a group of young people are taking care of themselves and each other by meeting regularly and sharing their life experiences. The BBC's Elizabeth Kazibure reports.
Watu Connect is a mental health advocacy group which brings young people together and gives them the opportunity to discuss pressing life issues, first and foremost mental health problems. The idea is to arm them with the help they need so they can defeat what's troubling them.
Communities like ours give young people a chance to learn from what's being discussed here. Also, we can learn through them as well. As a founder, I have learned a lot of things that will be beneficial to me as a person. For example, dealing with certain situations in relationships, and as well as beneficial for this organization. I have started to have mental health checkups every now and then.
In most societies in Tanzania, it's very rare for people to talk about mental health issues. It means young people lack the courage to ask for help when they need it the most.
What if we deal with cause?
We need to deal with people that are slowly showing signs of mental health problems, such as wanting to end their life as soon as possible. And that's what us professionals in this field are trying to do. Unfortunately, in our society, people tend to laugh at them or spread their stories on social media without knowing what exactly that person might be going through. So we do our best to keep them close to us and give them the help they need.
But has Watu Connect actually helped these young people in need?
I have learned that in relationships, it's best for people to know a person's background, especially whether they've had mental issues in the past. Not only their history, but their family's mental health history as well. It will help you decide if they are the right person for you or not.
Whether you have mental health problems or not, it's important for people to see a specialist every now and then. And by doing that, they will be able to learn different methods for dealing with it. It's better than ignoring it and not doing anything, because it's hard to tell a person has got mental health problems by just looking at them.
The group argues that health services investment in mental health among young people sets them up for a better life and a better future. They say many young people are at risk of joining gangs, which can have a disastrous effect on their mental health, and parents and guardians need to be on the lookout for their children and teenagers.
Parents, brothers and uncles do not have close relationships with young people anymore, leading to youth finding people who they believe will help them without knowing these people properly. And some go to people who, instead of getting the help they need, they end up getting worse than before.
In October last year, Tanzania held its first ever national dialogue on mental health, which was seen as a great step in tackling the issue. For now, it's up to everyone, from societies as a whole and individual families, to keep a caring eye for one another, as organizations like Watu Connect can only do so much.
I'm an elephant.
Elizabeth Kazibure, BBC.
Well, I'm joined now by Fiona Mukuria, a counselling psychologist and the founder of Lotasi, which is a wellness initiative helping young people cope with their mental health. Fiona, thank you very much for joining us. Would it be fair to say that the world, not just Tanzania or the African continent, is suffering a mental health crisis? But why is it that people are suffering in silence?
Yes, it would be very fair to say that. And one of the reasons that we can look at why people are suffering in silence is the fact that to ask for help or to say that you're suffering is such an act of vulnerability. And vulnerability is not something that is modeled for us. We are not taught to seek help, and nobody wants to appear like they are weak or like they don't know how to keep things together. And so for that reason, they would much rather suffer in silence. You'll also see a reason being that they're looking to avoid being stigmatized, because in some communities coming out as suffering from mental health, people will begin to look at you and label you as crazy. Some people perceive mental illness as people who are dangerous, and therefore nobody wants to be associated as being dangerous. And then you'll find that some people just don't have the language to be able to articulate the issues that they're facing. Mental illness is understood through the lens of psychology, and psychology is a Western body of knowledge. And so you'll find that within the African context, and people who are only speaking their mother tongue or vernacular languages don't have the words to be able to express the anguish or the inner experience that they're going through so that people can be able to understand them.
Fiona, obviously your job is to listen and to talk and to teach people to talk. We'll get into creating that environment where both parents, both adults are able to understand the young generation. But I wonder first off, if we could just talk about today's triggers for what is known as Gen Z. What are those triggers? They're very different from my generation. What would be the triggers today?
Right. Social media would be the largest trigger, because you'll find that now you can go on your phone and you'll be able to see what your peers are doing, the kind of lifestyle that they're living, the places they have access to, the things that they're purchasing. And so if you're comparing yourself to the progress that they're making, it can feel like you're sort of falling behind, like you're not doing enough. And so you'll find that the internet and the content that is being posted on there is the largest trigger that the Gen Z are facing.
You see, that is absolutely fascinating. So in my mind, one of the things that we also need to do is to learn more about the world of our youth, the world of our young. So how is it that you teach them to talk, and how is it that you would teach me to listen and to create an environment where they feel safe to talk? What would be your advice?
For one, I would teach the adults or the older people the act of giving empathic understanding to the young people when they come to talk to them, because you'll find that many people will dismiss young people and the issues that they're bringing to them because they feel like they're not relevant, they're not big enough, they're not actual issues or real issues. And in the life of the young person, to them it's very real. It's quite an actual problem. And so for the older people, the older generation, what we want to teach them is to offer empathic understanding, where you're putting yourself in the shoes of the young person and trying to understand what it's like for them to be going through those experiences in their situation, and not comparing to what life was like in your time or what your reality is as an adult or as an older person.
Okay.
For the younger people, you know...
Sorry, carry on, Fiona.
Sorry,
carry
go
on.
ahead.
Carry on.
Okay, I can go ahead, yeah. And for the younger people, what we're teaching them is to be honest about their experience. It doesn't matter if it'll be minimized by someone who doesn't understand. Just by talking about it, you have halved the problem because it's off your chest, and then you can be able to seek the support of the people who are able to give you that empathic understanding.
Okay, so we know that social media is one of the triggers. Like I said, often it's a case of you suffering in silence. So if you are a young person and you just feel slightly off, you close your bedroom door, you don't want to come out, you feel more comfortable with your head locked into that screen, what are the signs that you know that you need to go and speak to somebody? What do you tell people? What should the young themselves be looking out for?
Right, so you want to look for changes in your sleeping patterns. If you're sleeping a lot less than you usually do, or you're sleeping a lot more, or if you're having disturbances in your sleep where you're waking up in the middle of the night and are unable to go back to bed, or have trouble falling asleep at all, that's an indication of something that is wrong and you need to get help. You also want to look at your eating or your appetite, so you know how you normally eat. If you're lacking appetite entirely, that's an issue, or if you're overeating, that's also an indication that you need to seek some help. If you are withdrawing from your social circle, your family, if you're losing interest in activities that you were previously very excited about engaging in, that's another issue that you'd want to look at and start to look for help from someone who is around you that can support that help. If you're having any ideation about how people's lives could be much easier without you being around, if you've ever had the thought cross your mind like everybody else would be fine without me being here, or have heard someone else say that, that's also another indication of needing to seek some professional help.
Fiona Mukuria, I just hope many people have heard what you've said. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Focus on Africa now. A Ugandan music promoter has been charged with negligence in connection with a stampede on New Year's Eve in which 10 people died. Abby Musinguzi has been accused of closing all but one of the exits at a venue of a fireworks display near the capital. He denies the charges. Mozambique has taken its seat on the UN Security Council. The country's ambassador to the UN installed the national flag alongside fellow new members Ecuador, Japan, Malta and Switzerland. Each country will serve at the Council as a non-permanent member for the next 2 years, along with 5 other non-permanent members. All join the 5 permanent members: US, Russia, France, the UK and China. Gambian government has charged 3 people in connection with last month's alleged coup attempt. 2 civilians and a police officer were arrested on the 30th of December and charged on Tuesday with concealment of treason and conspiracy to commit a crime. At least 7 soldiers have already been arrested in connection with this case. Still to come, more action from Down Under, as Tunisia's Ange Jabeur returns to the court in the Adelaide International Tournament after a record-setting 2022.
They say the soul never changes. While what we see around us may change and grow, the feeling of where it came will always stay the same. The soul is life, guiding us to make us who we are and where we go. And where I'm from, we go forward, while never forgetting from where we came. So come, we have much more to share. Malaysia, truly Asia.
Over Istanbul, but this has to be the strangest of all.
Music is such an important tool in our lives, not just to bring pleasure, but also to heal and to bring hope.
We're just in a period now that African brands are just owning that, owning what we have and projecting it in however they see fit.
I just love this place, because this is somewhere where memory itself is set in stone.
This festival is all about light over darkness, the triumph of good over evil. And that idol over there, Kali, stands as a symbol of hope and power to everyone in the community.
Inspiring arts and culture on BBC World News.
Now, Nigeria is in a fight to conserve its natural environment. Not only are trees threatened by deforestation, but unique animal species too are at risk. Forest conservationist Rachel Ikeme is one of the few women in this male-dominated line of work in Nigeria. She took some time out to tell us about what drives her to make a difference every day and to explain how she overcame so many obstacles to do the job she loves.
When growing up, I was that kind of child. I wanted adventure. I mean, right from the age of 10, I was in martial arts. I loved adventure, but I didn't have a role model to look up to in any sense. I sort of like found my only inspiration really was, and still to this day, it's really just seeing that this problem can be solved, that there is a problem and needs to be solved and someone needs to solve it. That has been solely and the only reason why I'm doing this job and the only motivation why I do. I doubt if there's anybody doing this work that won't attest to the fact that it's a profession that gives back to you. I mean, imagine protecting forests. Forests are what, like they say, they are the lungs of the planet. They are the ones preventing floods. Forests are the ones saving us from the effects of climate change. So forests are what purifies your air, the air you breathe. They purify the water, you know, that come from the rivers and all other water systems. So there is no way you are working to conserve forests or to conserve wildlife that you don't feel the fulfillment of what you're doing, because you're not just helping yourself, you're helping your generation, you're helping future generations. Everyone else was behind me, and the next thing I saw was the forest opened up, and then I saw an elephant. I screamed, "Elephant!" And so everybody else in the team, even though they didn't see the elephant, they all ran and they sped off and they left me right there. Imagine that if I one leg of my boots, like I left it in the mud of that forest there and ran. In the beginning, my mom was total no. She didn't want to hear it. In fact, she insisted I shouldn't do it. She screamed, yelled, reported me to everybody. They thought it was real dangerous. They thought it was out of this world and unthinkable that I would take on a job of going to the forest, living in the forest and say I'm looking for animals. All across the world, you find very few females, very few women being conservationists. It's very unfortunate, and of course, it's because of how sometimes hardcore being a field-based conservationist can be and how physically challenging it can be. But it doesn't mean it's a job for men. I actually feel that women would do a better job being conservationists than men, because women are inherently or naturally nurturers. I mean, a woman is a nurturer by nature. She nurtures, and the very essence of conservation is nurturing. So I would encourage a woman to do it by all means. And it didn't stop me from being a full woman, because I don't know what some people tell me as being a full woman, but I grew up, I live life more or less like every other woman lives her life. I enjoyed spending days, nights, several months in a year in the forest and seeing no other person but my team members and seeing wildlife and all of that.
The story there of the Nigerian forest conservationist Rachel Ikeme. To Cape Verde, where the Prime Minister, Dr. Ulysses Correia Silva, has announced that the country's national stadium in Praia will be named after the world football icon Pelé, following his death last week from colon cancer. The 15,000-seater Estadio Nacional de Cabo Verde is home of the national team, the Blue Sharks. In a statement published on Facebook, the Prime Minister underscored the historical ties the country shares with Brazil. To tennis, and the Tunisian Ons Jabeur plays her first match in the Adelaide International Tournament against 45th seed Sorana Cirstea on Thursday. She became the first Muslim and Arab to make it to the Grand Slam final last year when she was runner-up at Wimbledon and runner-up in the US Open. She recently told Vogue Arabia that the Wimbledon loss was devastating for her. She described crying after the game, her toughest final so far. Cameroon is struggling to find replacements for 21 of their 13-member under-17 squad after they were declared too old or over age ahead of the African Cup of Nations qualifying tournament, which takes place this weekend. Now, the West African country is hosting the tournament, and this is just the latest age fraud scandal to rock Cameroonian football. You remember that in July of last year, the country's Sports Ethics Committee pledged to combat the issue, which is actually rife amongst youth teams, not just in Cameroon, but right across the African continent. Well, that was the sport, and that is a wrap from Focus on Africa, and a wrap from me as well. From myself and the team, don't forget you can get in touch on social media. I'm at Kwasi Burak. Goodbye.
The story of the United States has been written for centuries, penned by millions of authors, written in every language, from every perspective. It's an epic adventure, a love story, and a mystery, full of twists and turns, newfound discovery, and a cast of unforgettable characters. With every chapter as unique as our people, our history, and our land.